Hello, I'm Bill Fox, and this program is about East Brunswick. A topic that is on everybody's mind these days is snow and snow on the streets and how we get rid of it and how to drive in it. So our program this time is going to deal with snow removal in East Brunswick and how you can drive in the snow safely in case the snow happens to still be on your street. With me to help in this discussion are Judith Lebline, who is Director of Recreation, Parks, and Community Services in East Brunswick, Thomas Vann, who is Director of Public Works and Water Resources for the township, Sergeant Thomas Finn of the Department of Public Safety, who will be talking to us about how to drive safely in the snow. Let me ask you this question, Tom Vann, first of all. People very often complain about snow removal, particularly when the street hasn't been done exactly the way they'd like it. And they often ask me, don't you have some plan, or do you just hit streets at random? Maybe you could talk a little bit about whether or not we do have a plan and what's in that plan.
Well, yes, that's very true. We have a plan. In fact, we've just rewritten our entire snow and ice control plan.
Is that it that's here
yes,
on the
I do
table?
have a copy of it here on the table. But it was
looks rather thick. What's in it?
Well, within the snow and ice control plan, we've identified what methods we use to control the snow and the ice, when we send out the sand spreaders, where we send the plows, how we decide which of the streets go first and which ones don't go first, and what methods are the best to really remove the snow for every kind of a condition.
Now, how do you decide which streets get done first? Do you go to the Mayor's Street first, or is there a different scheme?
Well, I think, as you well know from the last few storms, the Mayor's Street's definitely not the first to be plowed, and nor is the street that I live on the first to be plowed. The scheme that is used is strictly based on traffic. We do have priority streets, and those are streets that are very high traffic streets, like Dunham's Corner Road, Tice's Lane, New Brunswick Avenue, Old Stage Road. These kind of roads have a lot of traffic on them, and they're very likely to have very serious accidents if we don't attend to those right away. And because of that, we do those streets first, and then we go into all the rest of the areas and try to do them without any particular set priority, so we don't really save anybody's street until last. There's a lot of streets out there, and they do all of them as quickly as they can.
How many miles of streets do we have to take care of?
Well, just today I got an update from the engineering department, and there's now 159.3 miles of streets that we're responsible for in East Brunswick.
And each of those has to be plowed in two directions?
Each of those has to be plowed in two directions. Sometimes, depending on the width of the street, they may have to go up and down the street as many as 5 or 6 times to get the entire roadway clear of snow.
Now, what's the objective in terms of trying the snow clearing operation? And after the storm stops, what do you try to do first?
Well, the first thing that we do is we start working really while the storm is still going on. We do send out our sand spreaders on the primary roads to make sure that we can prevent any serious accidents from happening. And once we get the major streets under control, then we'll begin plowing when the snow reaches about 2 inches in depth. The primary purpose of what we're trying to do is definitely to prevent accidents. That's the first and primary goal that we have to achieve. And the second thing is to make sure that everyone can get out within a reasonable amount of time. In terms of how long it takes, I think everyone should be able to expect that within about 12 hours after a snowstorm, you should be able to get out and drive on the road. It's not always going to be bare pavement, but you won't be snowbound after about 12 hours.
Now, Judith, what do you have to do with this? Do you run the ski programs while
Do I
people are
ask?
waiting to get out of their house?
No, I'm afraid it's not that light, really.
Oh.
The Division of Parks has separate responsibilities when it comes to snow emergency. And the first thing we do is we do our priority A areas, and that's the Civic Center parking lot, so everyone could get to work and handle the snow emergency. We do pedestrian walkways, the one that crosses over Route 18, the Egger Street overpass. We do other walkways that are necessary to keep pedestrian traffic moving. Once
Are the
we
walkways mostly school routes?
We do have school walks that we're responsible for as well. We have 15 school walks, and those are so that the kids can get to and from school. As soon as the snow starts to fall, we plan how we're going to attack those areas. Once we have our priority A or the primary areas done, we take part in the overall snow operation because it's a town-wide effort and it's a town-wide emergency. So once we're sure that we can get our priority A done, we kick right over and become a part of Mr. Van's whole snow attack plan.
Now, before we look at some videotape of actual snow operations, Sergeant Finn, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the things people can do if they have to drive before the street is, or a street is plowed and cleared of snow.
Well, our best advice is obviously not to go out unless it's absolutely necessary. If somebody does find it necessary to go out, we suggest that they at least have snow tires on the vehicle. Without snow tires, all you're going to do is become a problem for the emergency vehicles as well as the snow plows.
Do so-called all-weather tires or radials and so on work about as well?
They do. I don't think there's a real noticeable difference in the performance between them and the snow tires. What really makes a difference is if you do have chains on the car, they aid greatly in traction.
Now, as I think I remember, the police use chains when there's a heavy snowfall.
Yes, we do. We have to get through no matter what, and the chains enable us to go through deeper snow and icier conditions where just regular snow tires wouldn't be sufficient. A second thing that the motorist could do is put some extra weight in the trunk if they have a rear-wheel drive vehicle. A couple of 50-pound bags of kitty litter is an excellent thing to use because not only is it added weight in the trunk, but if you do get stuck, it does aid you in becoming unstuck by sprinkling it on the ice. You should also maintain at least a half a tank of gas. If you go below that and something should happen where you become disabled, that gas that you have in your tank may be all you have to keep you warm. It also, the weight of the gas in the tank assists you in maintaining your traction. You should also carry a blanket, a shovel, and some flares in the trunk in the event you get stuck. You should also make sure that the wiper blades are in good condition. They sell winter blades now, which are much heavier duty than the standard blade. You should also keep a full reservoir in your windshield washer fluid. That is an absolute necessity when you're traveling in the slushy conditions.
Sounds like some of these things are things you should really do at the beginning of the winter before the snow season comes.
They are, but unfortunately, many people wait until the storm hits to do it. That's why you see the rush for snow shovels in Rickles when we've got 4 inches of snow already on the ground. Most people wait until it's absolutely necessary, then they try to run out and do it all at once. And at that point, they have problems. You should also reduce your speed, obviously, in the snowy conditions, and also increase the following distance from the vehicle that's in front of you, because it's going to take you at least twice as long as far as distance to stop your vehicle and avoid a collision. You should avoid sudden stops, sudden starts, and any jerky motions with your vehicle, which would tend to cause you to lose control. Avoid locking up your brakes. You should pump them gently. If you do begin to skid, you should ease off either the brakes or the accelerator, whichever one you happen to be on at the time, and steer into the direction of the skid. By that I mean whichever way the rear end of the car turns. If it's skidding to your right, you would turn slightly to the right to try to recover from the skid. If you do become disabled, turn on your 4-way flashers and wait for a patrol car. There's no problem with somebody coming by and spotting your car and calling us. It's not like we're out in the boondocks. There are plenty of people passing by. We're notified pretty quickly and we'll send a patrol car to assist you.
Now, how about driving techniques? I observe, I work in Piscataway, and whenever there's a snowstorm in the daytime and I try to get back to East Brunswick typically will take me 2 to 3 hours to make a trip that normally is maybe 25 minutes. What are some of the driving techniques that people should be aware of in trying to drive in the snow?
Well, the ones I mentioned already, such as avoiding sudden stops and starts. When you have a snowstorm, it's going to take you longer to get home. There's no way around it. And unfortunately, there are some people who still try to get home in a half hour from Piscataway, and they're the ones we wind up towing from the scene. You just have to take it slow, keep a safe distance from the car in front of you, and avoid the sudden starts, stops, and turns. There's really no way around it. If your car is properly equipped with snow tires and preferably chains, you're going to get home okay. It's just a question of how long it's going to take you.
Tom, you mentioned earlier that we spread a lot of sand and salt. In a typical storm, how much material would we use? Let's say the storm we had in a couple of the storms we've had in January now. How much material would we normally use?
This past storm that we're just finishing up now, we've currently used about 600 tons of salt and sand mixture on the roadways.
That's the storm on the 25th of January.
That's the storm on the 25th of January.
600 tons?
600 tons of material.
My goodness. Now, what's the, people call me occasionally and tell me that they never see a sand spreader. They never see, we must not use it. There were rumors that we'd run out in one of the storms in early January. 600 tons seems like an awful lot.
Well, it is a lot of sand and salt. We do try to keep about 800 to 900 tons in stock at all times at the Public Works Center. On the videotape tonight, you'll see a picture of the barn that we store it in, and it's a big project to keep all that stuff in there and keep it mixed and keep it available. We do get deliveries just about every day of the week in January, and we're able to keep up with it so far. We have not run out at all in January. We've been pretty close, but we didn't run out.
Now, I know I've learned that salt is not magic. What are the conditions, what do we use salt for, and what conditions do you have for that to work?
Salt is primarily used to help melt the ice that'll form when the traffic runs over the snow. By applying the salt and the sand, usually early in the storm on the busier streets, a lot of times we can be down to the bare pavement very quickly. It'll keep the snow soft enough so we can plow it off. Once the temperatures drop below 20 degrees, the salt really ceases to work. There's really very little that you can do to keep it from freezing up once the temperature drops that low.
I know that I think there have even been pictures in the newspaper of Church Lane, where it goes between East Brunswick and North Brunswick, and on one side it's to the bare pavement, and on the East Brunswick side it's still snow and ice covered. How does something like that happen?
Okay, that did happen last year. Part of the reason for that was that our crews had gotten caught in major traffic jams in East Brunswick, and we were not able to get out there before the snow had frozen up. On the other side of the bridge, it was a county road, and the county was out there and was able to sand it, and the mixture that they use also contains some calcium chloride, which does allow the salt to work right down to 0 degrees.
Now, so the county county uses calcium chloride.
That's correct. Yes.
Is that what the major roadways use also, the Turnpike and others?
That's correct. The Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway, the county and the state all use a mixture of salt with calcium chloride. It's a very expensive process, and it's not really necessary if the temperatures stay above 20 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's not what we've seen this winter, because we've had cold weather all the way through January. It's been a real problem.
What's the relative cost of salt and calcium chloride? Well,
a good example is that salt I can currently buy for about $28 a ton. Calcium chloride is currently running anywhere from $120 to $200 a ton.
And do you have to use as much calcium chloride as you do salt?
Well, normally the method of using it is that they will mix it into a brine and then spray it onto the salt, so that it's a little bit different process than what you use with regular salt.
Have we given any consideration to going to calcium chloride?
Absolutely. This year, I think, has proven to us that we're no longer going to have the warm winters where we can expect the salt and the sand to be really effective on the roadways. In the 1988 budget, we have proposed to put calcium chloride into our program.
Now, would that make every street bare to the pavement after a storm?
I certainly wouldn't want to guarantee that, but I think it would give us a little better chance at getting them clear.
What's the cost of that?
Well, that program, as we had outlined in the budget, we were looking at putting $18,000 to do just that. The overall cost of it will depend on how many times we actually have to use the calcium chloride and how much material we have to buy, and that depends on what the winter actually is like.
The other thing that I've been told often by residents who are unhappy with their streets is that, you know, they'd heard we'd run out of money for snow removal. Two questions. How much do we budget for it, and can we run out of money to do it?
Well, we've never really stopped operations based on running out of money at all. When we monitor the money very carefully, and when we start to run out, you hear about it right away, the council hears about it, and we do try to get additional appropriations as necessary so that we can carry on. In 1987, we did have to do that. And
How much did that turn out
well,
to be?
the total expenditure in 1987 was about $146,000, which, if you look at the amount of mileage of roadways, comes out between $900 and $1,000 per mile that we're spending on snow removal.
Now, that really we don't pay the base salary of the operators during that time from that fund, do we?
No, no. That fund strictly buys the sand, the salt, the repair parts for the snow equipment only, and it pays for the overtime because snowstorms normally occur at night.
And do we pay for contractors out of that as well?
We also pay for contractors out of that. That's correct. Yes.
So in a typical situation, if there is one, how many pieces of equipment would we have out on the road, and how many operators would we have available?
Well, in a typical storm, we will be able to put between 15 to 20 operators in trucks working on the roadways. We have a few older trucks that are spare trucks that we keep to use in case one of them breaks down or some problem will occur. We do contract out with a local contractor here, and we will get as many as 3 trucks from a contractor to assist us. So that makes a total of maybe 20 to 25 pieces maximum. It's very rare we'll ever have any more than about 20 out on the road.
Is maintenance a problem?
Maintenance has improved quite a bit this year. Now, in past years, a lot of the equipment was very old. It had some maintenance problems from many years ago. In the past year, we've spent a lot of a lot of time on repairing these things, replacing some of the trucks, getting them in good shape before the winter. This winter, maintenance has not been a problem at all. Also on the videotape, you'll see where we're working on some of the trucks. When a guy does have a problem, a plow will break or some problem will happen, the repair crews will get right on the truck and it'll be back out on the road within a matter of minutes after he comes in.
Is plowing snow something that requires some skill?
I believe, yes, it is. It requires skill and it requires a lot of stamina. These operators are required to be out there as much as 16 hours at a time. A lot of times it's very boring work because they're driving and they're going forwards or going backwards, particularly in doing cul-de-sacs and courts. It becomes a very difficult project to undertake.
Judith, I know you had not had this responsibility in your previous job, and part of your getting into your new job was to drive a snowplow.
That's why I had to smile when you said, how difficult is it? because we look at it as an overall snow emergency and we all kick in to the project, immediately the management of the Parks Division kicks over to snow control. And I wanted to find out exactly what it was like to operate a plow and or the front end loader to mix sand and salt. And it was quite a interesting afternoon. It's extremely tedious, as Thomas said. You have to make as many as 10 passes to get a street clean from curb to curb. I learned to drive a tandem.
Tandem is a great
large,
big truck.
great big truck. The gentleman that taught me, Mike Opaleski, may argue the point that I learned to drive it, but I got it out of the driveway and across the street and down the road. And I can't tell you how difficult it is to think about operating a plow, this powerful, huge truck that is under your control, much like having a loaded weapon in your hands, because there's this huge truck. You're looking out for pedestrians, you're looking out for cars, parked cars, and trying to get snow clean and trying not to leave snow behind, and it's extremely tedious. And then these men and women are doing it for 16 hours in the course of a day, and often in the very dark and very cold time. The experience of a front-end loader is the most unique. I laughed a few times and I screamed a few times because there's nothing like rocking that thing full of sand and salt. And these men and women are out there doing this while you're home, cozy, you know, behind a fire, and they're still out there, and we've forgotten that they're out there working. So I was able to have that experience, and I'm glad I did, because I understand what I'm doing when I'm saying, hey, you have to go out there and do this street, and we're doing that at 2 in the morning.
Point out that during really serious snowstorms, I'm typically out on the road,
Oh,
not
yeah.
behind the cozy fire.
When I say you, when I say you, Mayor, I don't mean you in particular, but when the public is out there nice and warm in their homes, these men and women are going around the clock. We also have the people that are out shoveling, and I think the Parks Division has all of that work to do, and they are out there with the snow falling around them with snow blowers and snow shoveling. And if anyone's shoveled their driveway, this past storm, it was that heavy, wet kind of mush, and they were shoveling for 10 and 12 hours out there, shoveling that snow away, and it's a long, long couple of days.
Tom, you had mentioned to me in another conversation that the temperature patterns seem to have changed surrounding the snowfalls last year and this year. Could you talk about that just a little bit?
Well, it seems that in years past, we would have a snowstorm where the temperatures might be in the 30s. They might be even as high as 37, 38 degrees. And then after the storm, that the snow would melt. And you might get 12, 14, 15 inches of snow, but the next day it would still be 25 to 30 degrees outside. That's not been the pattern this year at all. We've had now 4 storms that within 6 hours after the end of the storm, it's 20 degrees. Within 8 hours, it's 2 degrees outside sometimes. And that has really created quite a problem for us.
What problems does that create?
Well, the biggest problem is that the snow will in fact freeze to the ground before we can get it plowed. And once it freezes down on the ground, the plow can't really move the ice at all.
Last winter, we had that terrible experience of a heavy snowfall and an
January,
immediate
yes.
Freeze, and we all took a lot of criticism for the condition of the roads at that time. What could we have done anything about that?
Well, there were a few things that we had analyzed it afterwards to try to figure out what really went wrong. And that storm, it was a little bit of a special condition because we had a heavy snowfall, we had an enormous amount of traffic on the roads right at the time that the snow was falling. And then that was followed within a very short time by a really hard freeze. I think it got down to 0 that night. And what had happened was our snow plows were out, we were trying to leave Hart's Lane, we were trying to get out on the roads and get them clean, and we were stuck in traffic. And the plow just simply can't do any good when it's stuck in traffic. And that was the biggest problem. And then on top of that, the traffic created problems for the county and created problems for the state vehicles, and we had an enormous amount of accidents that we had to respond to, and tractor trailers that were getting stuck on Route 18, and cars that were having problems everywhere. And it was a real nightmare for all of us.
After the ice was there, I know it took several days, and we had several days of very cold weather. Why couldn't we just do something the next day and get rid of it?
Well, we attempted to. In fact, we worked around the clock really for about a week afterwards before we really got most of the ice off. We attempted using sand and salt. We attempted using salt. We even bought calcium chloride and put down. We got the major roads. It took us 2 days really to get through that ice pack, just to get the major roads open. But we didn't get the rest of the roads open really for a week afterwards. The equipment that we damaged in the process of just getting those roads clean it was an incredible amount of problems that we had with that.
What have we done this year to try to avoid a similar situation?
Well, the most important thing that we did is we took the lessons from that storm and we put them into this new snow and ice control plan, which puts our people on the road, on the major roads early in the storm, make sure that they're out, getting at least these major roads clear so that we don't have the problem that we had last year of 2-inch ice packs on Dunham's Corner Road. I mean, this was a terrible problem, and the number of accidents that we had because of that. This year you won't find that on the major roadways. There is still ice packs on some of the courts, but people are only driving 5 miles an hour on the courts. We don't have the 45-mile-an-hour accidents that we were running into last year. I think by doing that, by putting the equipment in better order, by working with the police department on trying to make sure we don't have traffic jams, I think all of that has been orchestrated together, and this year I think we're really seeing some results paying off from that. And I have to give some credit to the county because they have really been out this year in a manner that we just haven't seen for years. And I think that's been a big help for us.
Why don't we, now as we've been talking about this for a while, why don't we take a look at the videotape we have, which is from the storm of the 25th. I think this was done the next day. And maybe while we're looking at that, you can all talk about what we see there.
This is perhaps a familiar sight to many of you, watching our snowplow come down the street and
Probably
push.
not familiar enough to some people.
Yeah. As you watch him go along here, he's pushing snow into your driveway as you go by there. You'll see that from this picture, it takes several passes down the roadway to really get it clean.
Now, I believe this is Dutch Road, and that's pretty straight, so he's able to keep going there.
One of the things that occurs to us, and you'll notice in some of these pictures, that a number of the cars are following him very closely. This is really a very hazardous thing to do because the snowplows have to start and stop very frequently, and especially the ones with sand spreaders in the back, it can be a very serious problem for it. And you'll notice some places in here he's had to back up. We find out a lot of times that if he doesn't get it cleaned correctly, then he'll have to back up and do it again. As you can see, the camera in the truck here is moving around quite a bit. I think one of the things that the cameraman has noticed here is that these plow trucks really do take quite a beating from plowing the snow.
There's nothing like hitting a cover of a manhole when you're pushing one of those plows. It'll wake you up but good.
Now, in this photo, you'll see Victor putting on a shoe on the snowplow. These shoes allow the plow to ride over the roadway and keep it from catching on all the little imperfections. It, however, doesn't prevent manholes from causing problems for us.
That's Vic Romatowski, who's a foreman in
Parks
our Parks
foreman.
division. Now, but putting that shoe on there means that it's not going to be plowed to the pavement.
Well, the shoe is set normally so that the plow blade is right at the pavement level. It prevents a lot of excessive wear, but we do need that to support the weight of the plow, because the front of these plows can weigh as much as 1,800 pounds. Once again, you can see how much the truck is bouncing around while he's doing it. If you can imagine doing that for 16 hours.
You have to stay alert throughout the whole thing, which I think is the biggest strain. You can see the little marker there, having to always be aware of where your plow blade is while you're driving and looking out for traffic and pedestrians.
Now, this is not a road.
This is one of our responsibilities, the Parks Division, to clear the Health Department parking lot and other parking lots, the Civic Center parking lot, so that people can get to work and supply the citizen services that are still needed. We get out and do those in the earliest part of the day and then get on to the other snow removal responsibilities.
I believe someone said this was taken just at daybreak.
Yes, we started the operation, this part of the operation, at 5 a.m. that morning. The Public Works crew had been in throughout the night already, and we came in into the parking lots at 5. We were able to attack all of our priority A areas and become part of the overall Public Works operation by 7 a.m. that morning. So we were able to send our loaders and our drivers with plows over to Public Works at that point. This was an especially difficult snow, that heavy, wet snow to move, and it iced up quick.
Now, where is this, Tom?
Now, this is one of the pictures of a truck that has had some breaking down problems. It's being repaired right now.
It's in our Public Works Center.
Right. This unit on the back is the sand spreader, and you can kind of see the business end of it right there. What these trucks do is they'll carry about 5 cubic yards of sand, and they'll spread sand out from that spinner in the back by about 40 feet around it. Now, this picture here is where we store the sand and the salt. Any of you who've driven down Hart's Lane have probably seen this structure. It holds 950 tons of material, and we try to keep it full all winter long. And you can see we have the loader in there right now, and it's ready to go when somebody comes in and needs the sand and the salt. The mixture of sand and salt that we use there it's approximately 1 part sand to 1 part salt. We found that on most of the roads in East Brunswick, that seems to be the most effective.
Purpose of the structure is to keep all that dry.
Well, there were several reasons for it. The keeping it dry is a big part of it. One of the mandates that we had from the Department of Environmental Protection was to keep the salt from leaching out and running into the groundwater.
Now, this is how we store the spreaders.
Yeah, this is a structure we built last year to store the sand spreaders. Now, the nice thing about these is that you don't really need any special equipment to put the sand spreader into the truck. You can just back it right in there and hook it in. This is a picture of John Romatowski, one of our employees who does a lot of welding for us. And you can see he's repairing a snowplow that took a beating from the snow and ice out there. We've kept John very busy this year.
Tom, there's been some new sand spreaders and plow blades purchased this year, haven't there?
Yeah, all of the plows have had new blades put on this year. We did buy some new sand spreaders this year, and I now have 4 really good sand spreaders, and that's one of the things that really has contributed to the improvement.
Now, what's this we're looking at now?
This is one of our foremen. He's in the process here of keeping track of where everybody is, keeping records of that. You see the maps on the wall there, those the foremen use. The maps will assign who is in a particular area there. We use one map here, which we have the close-up on here now. As a street is plowed off and is clear, we mark it down on the map that it's clear and ready to go. You see there's a couple different colors there. We use that to help decide what time we have it done, so we know exactly how well we did. The foreman uses the two-way radio to contact the different trucks. We try to keep people assigned in a particular area, and that seems to work the best. The guy knows right where all the problem areas are and knows how best to do it. And we've found that that really works the best.
There's also sections within the map that we contract out to people, and then a management staff goes out and observes their work.
Now this is who you get when you call the Public Works Center. You'll talk to one of our secretaries here. This is Joanne Gallo. You'll note that every call that comes in is marked down on the sheet of paper, and every call is checked out by the foreman. Okay, this is one of our other secretaries, and you'll see that she's doing the same thing. And it's
Tom, I've had people call me to tell me about their street because they were afraid we'd forget about their street. Mm-hmm. Is that very likely to happen?
Well, there's never a street that's absolutely forgotten. There are times when, for example, a snowplow will break down and it gets delayed until a little bit later in the storm. But by using the maps, by keeping track of where everybody is, the foreman always check to make sure that the streets do get plowed. And we do not forget streets.
We talked a lot about the sand and salt, and it is effective in controlling ice on the streets, but isn't there an environmental cost from spreading all that salt?
Well, the mixture that we use, which is the 1 part sand to 1 part salt, does not have adverse effects on the roadside plants. We haven't really found any place where we've actually killed the roadside grass with the sand and the salt. I think some of the higher concentrations, I think we'll have to be very careful when we start using calcium chloride to make certain that we don't have the roadside kill.
Doesn't that drain off into the water supply?
Well, it does to a certain degree, but the other thing is that in the process of draining off, it is diluted very, it's very dilute by the time all the snow melts and the water all runs down in the drains. The biggest environmental problem is the amount of sand that's left after we finish a storm. On a major street, sand can be a real nuisance, and until we get the street sweepers out and get it cleaned up, it can be a problem.
Another point of service, people would like to see the sweepers out right away, but we do wait a while, don't we?
Yeah, well, we generally start street sweeping about in April, after we know that we're not going to be putting any more sand down on the roadways. Right now, we are in the process of getting the sweepers ready to go in April, even though we're still right in the middle of the snow.
We didn't see a lot of parked cars in the videotape, but we do have some snow emergency streets, which are all marked with signs. Sergeant Finn, what does a snow emergency street mean, and what happens if you ignore that sign?
It's a street that's been designated by the town council in the form of township ordinance. And specifically, if a car is parked on the street when it's snow covered, either during a storm or immediately following it, it is removed by us, by a wrecker, in order to facilitate the snow removal.
Tom, we don't have that many, as I remember. Is that really important to have those cars off?
Particularly in certain neighborhoods, it is very important because the roadways in some of these neighborhoods are only 25 feet wide, and if there's a parked car on both sides, it leaves about 12 feet for the snowplow to get through. And the snowplow itself is 11 feet long. That really doesn't leave much room for the truck to maneuver in the roadway. We have found that since we've added some of the streets onto the list that were real problem areas for us, it has helped quite a bit having the cars moved out of there.
Now, that's a case where we've gotten people to help us by passing a law that says they have to. What are some other ways that folks can help us do our job better?
Well, one of the things, of course, is that even if you're not on a snow emergency street, it's better not to park your car in the street, if at all possible, because the plow has to go around it. A lot of times you'll have as much as 2 feet of snow right in front of your car. You'll have a problem getting out if you park on the street. Not only that, after the car's moved, then we still have all that snow left on the street, which will then freeze up and become a real problem to remove later. There are a number of other things that people can help us with. I think, as Sergeant Fenn had talked about, if people will limit their driving during the snowstorms to allow us to get the roadways clean, we can avoid a lot of the traffic problems. I think if people could yield the right-of-ways to the snowplow where possible to allow the guy to get through. You know, I think keeping away from the snowplows is a really good idea. Those plows, even though it's a big piece of equipment, they do move around a lot. They're very difficult to control. And I think staying as far away from them as possible is a really good idea. The sand spreaders in the back, it's a really important thing to stay away from that end of the sand spreader. Those things will throw sand out as much as 60 feet, and if there's even the slightest little pebble or something that got in that sand, we've had cases where it's broken windshields and damaged the front of cars, and it's a real problem. Probably one of the most frustrating things for us is to snowplow a street and then come back 2 hours later and find that everyone has pushed the snow from the driveways out into the street. This creates not only something that is unattractive, but it's a real hazard on a lot of streets. You know, once the snow is off the street, if you push the snow back in there and someone has an accident on that street, you could be held liable for the damages.
Is that against the law too?
It's absolutely against the law. We have an ordinance prohibiting that, and it's one of the really most serious problems that we have.
Is this mainly individuals, or is it commercial operators, or what?
Well, it seems to be a little bit of both. You know, we do have people who, for a living, go out and plow driveways. Some of them are very good. They'll push the snow out of the driveway. They'll push it to the side. They'll push it someplace where it's not really a problem in the roadway. But then again, we have others that'll push it out, and they'll leave ridges out in the street, and they'll leave all kinds of problems there. And the other thing is we're finding increasing problems with snow blowers. If you clean your driveway...
Is that testimony to our affluence?
Or laziness.
Perhaps, but if people use a snow blower to clean the driveway and aim it all out into the street, or clean the sidewalk and aim it all out into the street, a lot of times that stuff is a real fine powder which quickly freezes up and causes a real ice problem on the roadway. And it's not something that we're going to be able to go back and clean up right away after a storm. We have so many streets to do that once we get one clean, we really can't afford to spend a lot of time there.
So if someone has a snowblower, they should direct the snow onto their lawn or away from the street.
Away from the street.
We do have a diagram that might help. We have some helpful hint here.
Okay.
One of the biggest complaints that we do get is about snow being pushed into a driveway after it's been cleaned. Now, keep in mind, if this is an average street, not a street with a court, that if this is your driveway, when you're cleaning the driveway, it would be best to clean it onto your property, if possible, and if not, to follow the line of traffic. A plow follows a regular line of traffic, and if this is representative of the plow blade. And if you should clean your driveway and stack it up right here, it's natural that when our plow passes and hits that pile, where's it going to go but right back in your driveway? So if you use some common sense and clean your driveway to the downside of the plow will then help divide it more evenly along the front of your property and hopefully not into your neighbor's driveway. We get a lot of calls about complaints about the snow is in my driveway, and when we call back and say, well, where would you like it to go? People say, well, put it anywhere, put it in my neighbor's driveway, but not in mine. So the other thing is to keep in mind on the upside of where the plow would be hitting, if you are going to be shoveling or snow blowing, get some of that cleaned away, so that when the plow comes by, you can help us and we can help keep your driveway open. It's extremely difficult to try to clean curb to curb when a plow is coming by, a snow blower is blowing right onto the plow, and it's hard to keep morale up that way at the same time.
The one of the big complaints, another big complaint about snow removal, in fact, we've had cases where our operators have been threatened by neighborhoods, has to do with snow going into the driveway after people have shoveled and the snowplow comes along, particularly after heavy snow. I mean, literally, we've had to call the police to assist the operator because the men of the neighborhood were after him with shovels and broom handles and things, banging on the truck. I mean, it was a terrible thing. Is there any way to keep the snow out of the driveway?
Well, the best way to keep it out of the driveway is wait until after the snowplow has been there, and then clear the driveway, and then you will not have problems.
That's about the only way.
That's really about the only way.
What we've showed you.
And the job of the guy driving the snowplow is to move the snow off of the road, and it's not going to be possible to miss every driveway in doing that. We are in the process, and we have been over the years trying to train guys when they're in the courts how to do it without creating big problems in there. But every once in a while, we still do have some difficulties where a lot of snow will get pushed in somebody's driveway, and they do try to avoid it as much as they can.
The other thing is mistaken identity too, wouldn't you say, Tom? We've had some citizens call complaining about the sloppiness of a snow cleanup, only to find out that it's a private contractor who's cleaning a neighbor's drive. We've run across that. You've gone down the street and you left a whole big pile in the middle of the street, only for us to find out that it was ABC driveway cleaner and not the township when we've gone out to investigate it. I think also we never leave a big wall of snow down the center of a street, and that's a good clue that perhaps someone has pushed their driveway out onto the middle of the street, because when our plows come down, the first pass is right down the middle of the road. So we make them passable and clean the center. If you find a big pile out in the middle, chances are there may have been someone that blew their snow out there, or a contractor that pushed it out.
How about new streets? When do we become responsible for the street?
Well, legally, we become responsible when the township accepts the street as a township street. There are many developments where people have lived in for as much as 2 years now that still don't have accepted streets. As a favor to the people who are there, we have been plowing most of these streets in any case, because we felt that since the people are living there, they are paying taxes, we will go ahead and plow the streets. The new streets are probably the most difficult for us to plow, because we run into more manholes and more problems in those areas than we do in any place else in town.
After this last storm, I had a number of complaints about the area on the other side of Old Bridge Turnpike, Buck Road and down in the Historic District and so on. It seems to be widespread. Now, the people who live there will claim, to me at least, that it's because they live on the other side of Old Bridge Turnpike that they get poor service while we're taking care of people, typically they'll say in Colonial Oaks or Lawrence Brook or some other area. How does a thing like that happen? I mean, it's clear that there were some problems there. How does a thing like that happen?
Well, they certainly were not the last on the route, because I know that even after that area had been done, I went home and my street hadn't been plowed yet either. So, and I don't live over there. But part of our problem in that is that we utilize people from other departments to help us. We have the water utility people, we have the parks people we had talked about previously, the traffic safety people that assist us in plowing. In this past storm, we did have a problem that the water utility had a water leak up on Cranberry Road, and that tied up the workers, and they were not able to get on the road. Now, this particular area happened to be the area that these guys were normally assigned to.
Now, when you say a water leak, you mean a water main break?
A water main break. It was
a big leak.
This was a big leak. It was a big problem, and in fact, they had worked all night on that water break getting it repaired. We try to cover that as much as we can. In fact, today in a session with the foreman, we talked about methods that we're going to prevent any future problems when we do have to take people for water emergencies, or the same thing can happen with the traffic safety people. They're our first line people when we have a serious accident. And if there was a serious accident, I don't have those people to help us plow either. So we do have contingencies. We have worked out who's going to be where on these things, and I don't think that that neighborhood will experience that problem again.
I think we try to learn from each and every storm. We have a critiquing session after each storm, immediately after, so that it's still all fresh in our minds. And that's the thing I've been most impressed with being new to the operation, is that we look at it and say, okay, where'd we go right, where'd we go wrong, and how are we going to change it for the next time? And these last storms have all been very different in the weather that followed them, or the amount of snow, or the type of snow, very wet as opposed to dry and flaky. And we really do look at mistakes that we've made and how are we going to correct them.
I'm
and
sure there
that's
are
real
those people
positive.
who would say, well, wait a minute, you know, it's been snowing in East Brunswick forever. Why is it we're just learning? You have an answer? I mean, why do we have to continue to have these critiques? Why don't we have it right yet?
Well, the conditions are always different. You know, it's like in today's storm. We had a very lively discussion among the foremen over what do we do about people who call in about the driveway problems. You know, this storm we seem to have more complaints about driveways than anything else. And part of the reason was because of the type of storm it was, the heavy snow. Part of the reason was there were not enough employees out at the time that we needed to be out because of the other problems. There were a number of reasons.
Time of day the storm hits.
The time of day it hits. I don't think we're ever going to be at a point where we're going to say, well, it's perfect, we've got it down, we know we're going to have it, you can't do any better than what we have right now. I think we have a good program right now. It is better now than it has ever been in the past. It's covering more area than it's covered in the past. We've added probably, I'd say, 20 miles of streets in the past 5 years in town. And I think those kind of things are changing conditions, and it's not something that we can sit down and say, well, we've now got it, and we're never going to have to look at it again.
And it's always fine-tuning, too. I think
Well,
it's fine-tuning all of the process.
And I don't think any of us will consider that we're perfect either. And I think that there's always room to learn, and to learn. We learn from the residents that call us. You know, if we find that we have a whole lot of calls in an area, that means we got a problem. You know, this area you talked about, the Buck Road, the Gladstone area, that was one of the top things on the list when we talked today. You know, what are we going to do about this? You know, maybe we did have a water break, but maybe we have to find some way to cover that. And I think we now have that solution.
One person who called me about Buck Road said that it had been, up until 2 years ago it was fine, and suddenly it was a problem. And I recall that the person who had been assigned to that area in the past retired about 2 years ago. And that leads me to ask how important are the people and the experience of the people, and how much of a factor is that in doing a good job?
I think my response to that is that these are the key people. The management and myself, we'll work out the snow plan, but unless the drivers are actually out there removing the snow, the plan doesn't really mean too much. Earlier I had mentioned about how we assign particular people in particular areas. I think that's an important feature, because when the guy has been plowing the snow out there a couple years in a row, we find that he knows right where the manhole problems are. He knows how to do a court without plowing in a driveway. He knows how to miss the mailboxes, and he knows how to do it right. And we find that in areas where we've had guys, the same guy in the area for 10 years, that those areas get done quicker, they get done cleaner, and with fewer problems than we have in any other area. This area in Buck Road is a very good example. We did have an employee who did that for many, many years who retired. We do have another employee on it now, and he's into his second winter on it, and he does very well with it. But he's also on the water crew, and we didn't have him this past storm.
So we keep trying, and I hope that each time it gets a little better. and if the weather would just cooperate by having 70 degrees after every snowfall, it wouldn't be a big problem. Thank you, all three of you, for being on the program and talking about this topic, which I think is very timely, and I hope that the folks who watched have learned something about how we do this, and I hope that they also recognize that we depend on them to let us know if the job isn't done right. And I probably don't have to remind them of that because they call without hesitation. But we do need their input, and we'll keep trying to do a better job.